All right. What's up, everybody? So I'm here with someone very special. You know, he's very knowledgeable. He's done so many beautiful things. I'm going to let you guys hear from him some of the credentials that he has. But I truly believe this is one of the most insightful people when it comes to connection with art, understanding what's going on within the business. And when you hear him talk about certain things that's just beyond just the music, you'll realize that this new realm of creatives and artists are so much more deeply connected, and people are not realizing the connection between spirituality and creativity. So I want you to go ahead, take a seat, get yourself together, because this conversation alone will probably connect a couple neural pathways for you. But this video is ideal for the creative that wants to keep their authenticity. So this is Todd. I want you to go ahead, let them know, number one, like, who are you? What do you do,
I'm a musician, I'm an artist, a creative, teacher, spiritual enthusiast. But I love philosophy too. I'm kind of all over the place. Yeah.
Okay, just so we can edify you, so people know to put some respect on your name.
Okay.
Let them know, some of the things that you've done. There's some pictures on your Instagram that show just like you've performed in front of thousands of people. That is a dream that some people want to acquire, what they want to live that. And you've worked with some beautiful people too, some very talented artists. I would love for you to let them know, some of the people that you've worked with and some of the things that you've done.
Yeah, for sure. So I've worked with people like John Bellion, Tory Lanez. I've done tours with people like Drake, Chris Brown, Zach Brown Band. I've kind of been in the music industry for about 10 years and been playing as a touring guitarist, as a music producer. I produced for people like Trippie Redd, Sinead Harnett, which is more of a UK artist. Trey Songz, a bunch of people.
That's dope. Some of those I didn't even know, so hearing that was kind of good too.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've
you be low key about that.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because it's like I feel like I'm just moving in a different direction at this point, but yeah, it's all kind of a blur.
Tell us about that. Like, when I connect with people, or people tend to feel drawn towards me, it's usually because they're going through a very spiritual transformation at the time, and they're looking for more clarity, looking for more answers. And I know that I can tend to be a reflection for people also. That's why we always connect with certain people, because of how much we are a reflection. My question to you is, were you always connected to this spirituality? Did this just happen, or was this something that you always felt and just now tapping into?
I think about a decade ago, that's when I really started to tap into it. And honestly, I think it was the internet that really kind of expanded me. People like Joe Rogan, the going on YouTube, Terrence McKenna, Alan Watts, doing all these spiritual deep dives. And I remember just living by myself and, having these periods of isolation where I just had deep self-inquiry. And I really remember having some beautiful moments of like self-reflection and getting into things like, yoga and healthy eating and all. As I started to explore that, I started to encounter other people on my journey who started to help me with things like meditation, got me into people like Joe Dispenza. If you don't know who Joe Dispenza is, I definitely recommend checking out his stuff too. His books are incredible.
He's a 7 also.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So what it did was it really kind of expanded my awareness to be like, okay, you can create music, but you can actually create who you are. You can actually create your external environment through your internal realm. So there was all this time for me getting to know my external, but I realized that I had a long way to go in exploring my internal self, and that's a whole nother
and that journey never ends. You said something very interesting that I kind of want to ask you. Do you see a connection between building a song or writing a song and the connection between building yourself up and creating yourself?
Yeah. Making a song is a spiritual process. There's a lot of
That's deep.
there's a lot of letting go that you have to do, and there's no timeline on it. You just kind of have to trust, and you have to go out and follow your intuition and not judge as you're as you're creating these ideas. And there's such an alignment and a parallel running between the artistic process and the spiritual process. And I think it's very, very difficult for someone to create art without getting to understand the spiritual side of themselves. You have to get to know yourself, because you're sitting by yourself for long periods of time. And what do you do when you meditate?
You sit with yourself.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this now, because that, when you said that, sometimes our body can respond to certain things that it hears.
Yeah.
And we all know the voice, it's a portal. The vocal cords literally looks like a vagina, like the womb. And when you said about, you talking about the connection between creating a song, it really resonated. It almost kind of like brought like a spark of emotion when you said that. And I just wonder how many people are not being patient enough with the creative process and not being patient enough when it comes to finding out who they are. Because sometimes when we're creating a song, we're judging what we're coming up with. And sometimes we don't want people to be in the studio because the process isn't always pretty to creating a song. Whereas when people listen to the song, it's like, oh my gosh, but if you was inside in that moment, would you still have that same, you get what I'm saying? So my question is, do you ever find yourself within that similarity of just not having patience with the music and not having patience with yourself sometimes? Or maybe beating yourself up because it's not coming out as quick as you may want it to?
Yeah, I feel like when I was younger, there was a lot of guilt and shame that I had around not performing at a certain technical level or not being able to create at the level of my peers at a certain point. And there was a long journey that I had to go through in understanding self-compassion and, kind of talking to myself in a positive way. So, that was a really long journey. And if you talk to any creative, they'll tell you, like anyone who does it professionally or on a daily basis, that it is a up and down journey, and you have to get really familiar with what they call the resistance. Have you heard of the resistance before?
Tell me about it. So
the resistance, I got this concept from an author, I forget his name. The Art of War, right? Well, there's a book called The War of Art, and it talks about the resistance that you get when you're coming up to a growth period, when you're creating something from the ether. Like my whole process with creativity is, I feel like we are literally, they aren't my ideas. My job is to kind of open up and free myself. So it's to practice the consistent letting go and, getting
out of the way.
Yeah. Ed Sheeran talks about it. It's like you got to get all the brown shit out of the faucet in order to get the clear stuff. Yeah. So I think where a lot of people go wrong is they judge the bad ideas.
Yes.
Where the bad ideas are actually good because you have to get them out. It's part of the process. So every time I sit down to create, at least 20 minutes, I know it's going to sound like
shit.
Not all the time, but for the most part, like it's not going to be great. And then all of a sudden, like, it's just, you just got to trust the process.
Well, let me ask you this. Maybe there is space for certain activities or practices to be done before the studio. So that way you can go in kind of as a clear channel, because as an artist, I know that sometimes there's just some days that you just go in and everything hits. Almost like basketball, almost like sports. But it's funny because I remember Michael Jackson spoke about that. He spoke about the fact that you have to just get out of the way. You have to let God speak through you. Yeah. And I wonder if what the type of person, because I feel like there's different archetypes of creatives. I think maybe the top creatives found a way to be so vulnerable and open to hear God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe in the certain spaces of where art is created, they're trying to contaminate those spaces so they don't hear God. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they don't get their highest level of creation because of how much noise they funnel through the creatives. Almost like a poison.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I feel like there are, you know, these parameters that a lot of people, so let's say in the music industry, have to follow, that are set up by these record labels, by the people that are running the show, that honestly may not really have a connection with the artist fans or anything like that. But maybe they're running some kind of, I don't know.
For sales or, you know.
Yeah, but, or what they think sells,
Yeah.
or, but the issue with that is, you know, say they're like trying to catch the algorithm or what's hot, you're not like letting the artist evolve and like follow their highest. The artist usually knows what's up.
Yeah.
You know, like there's been countless stories of people like T-Pain and others where, you know, they were like, yeah, I tried to, like, the label was trying to get me to put this single out, and I was just like, nah, I'll put this out, and it just went crazy. You know, they know their music, they know their fans.
What if, so, you know, there's a such thing as like the hero's journey. What if that is just a part of the process of the hero's journey, where at some point in your life, right before things start to really go the way that you want to, you have to pick whether you will listen to yourself or if you will listen to the outside world. Because it seems like, you know, I do a lot of studying and listening to people's story, and I even look at the greatest of the greatest, Michael Jackson, how he had an idea that nobody really saw, you know? So it's like, I feel that is the process of the creative learning to trust themselves.
Yeah, I think when you come up against people, like, let's say in the industry or when you're in the studio, such a big testing ground for other people for them to trust you, like, say from creative to creative, is if you stand on what you believe in with your music. So like, you might be playing a song and somebody's like, those vocals sound way too compressed and weird, and then you say like, no, I meant to do that, like, that's how I like it. And they'll be like, okay, you know. So yeah, like, you learn to kind of own what you create and really stand by it, and that's really, like, that budding up is where you start to develop your taste. So I think essentially it's kind of a good thing, you know, because you really, especially as you start to expand your you know, fan base or working with other people, you really need to, one of the hardest things, and I went through this, still go through it, is like understanding who you are and really standing on who you are. So it's this weird balance of, like, you know, knowing your authentic self, but also being able to spread your energy out into the collective.
I was just about to ask you, like, how, in your opinion, or how you feel people can probably go by this, like, how do you feel when it comes to that balance of standing on what you know and actually being open to certain criticism? Does that depend on who it's coming from? You know, because sometimes, like, I know I heard stories of Kanye. Like, Kanye sits there and asks his little girl, 9-year-old, hey, what do you think about this bar? What do you think about this line? You know, so how do you feel about that balance between standing on it? Because we know some artists that can be very like, no, like, this is how I want it. You know what I'm saying? Very ego driven.
Yeah.
And then, you know, those artists that can be a little too like, okay, like, how do you see that balance, or what do you feel about that balance?
I think it depends on what you want. You know, if you want a song that does, you know, really well on top radio or something like that, don't go to, like, you know, like, test it out. And that's what Kanye does. Kanye takes his tracks and he goes to, like, stadiums and he plays them for the audience and sees how they react, and he changes his album sequence and his songs based on the reaction before he releases.
Reminds me of Apple a little bit. Reminds me a bit of Apple, the Steve
Yeah.
Jobs situation.
Yeah.
Now, using Kanye as an example, not going too crazy with it, but on the artist, staying strictly artist
Yeah.
side of it, how do you feel about a creative going? Do you feel like an artist needs to have that level of Kanye in order to make it? When I say that, meaning like I'm not taking no for an answer. Do you feel like that's what's needed, or do you feel like not all the time, or in
Yeah.
certain situations, or depending on the person?
Well, if you look at Kanye's situation, he works with a massive team of people.
Okay.
You know, he works with like
Company.
anywhere from like 10 to 20 people, and you look at some of the biggest artists in the world, they have massive teams of people that help them create records. Some of them don't even write, you know, which I think that's kind of crazy for rappers, to be honest with you. And Chris Brown talked about this. He's like, if you're a singer, if you're a rapper and somebody writes for you, then it's like, you know, what's the deal?
Yeah.
But if you're a singer, like nobody can really sing like you. So
Yeah.
if they write for you, then it's like whatever. But yeah, so I mean, he's got a massive team of people, and so he's constantly getting feedback from other people that he respects. So he's got a really good radar on who's who, and so he's like a tastemaker. So he's really good. It's almost like
he's a pure producer.
Right, so he's like getting all the people in the room, and he's like trying to figure out, like a DJ Khaled. DJ Khaled's a perfect example of that, you know. So yeah, I don't know.
Do you see yourself in a position like that, like kind of stringing along people and creatives to create beautiful, you know, like symphonies?
That's what I want to do eventually. I'm not there yet. I feel like for years I've been working for other people, but like transitioning, that's where I see myself. Because through that journey, I'm starting to understand like what I want moving forward as an artist and what I want to create, you know, as a sound. So, but that took years to understand.
So I remember asking you this when we was up on the rooftop.
Yeah.
I like to ask. I'm the type of person where I will ask the same question over and over again because I know I'll get different answers. So my question to you is, what would you tell yourself at 23 years old, knowing what you've been through within the industry and where you are now?
I said this on the rooftop, but I'll say it again. Like I would, if I'm really serious about what I want to do, I would study the book Mastery by Robert Greene.
Okay.
And basically that book is a composition of some of the most amazing people in the world who've made massive discoveries, some of the best sports people, artists, whatever. And he studied them in depth and their journeys, whether that's through their harsh, you know, upbringings, their, you know, studying the mentorship, like how they handled their mentorship, how they handled their career, like mid-career.
Yeah.
I would basically study that book and really get to understand that before I went out and really sought a mentor or, you know, went really serious and in depth and did my own thing. But another thing that I would really get clear on is like who you are and really get in touch with your intuition and learn how to like conjure up your own inner compass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the time that you spent within the industry, say about 10 years.
Yeah.
And we talk about apprenticeship because I've had some mentors and I've noticed that like, at least for me, and you can tell me, you know, if you relate to this or not.
Yeah.
I've noticed that Mastery, just to spoil the book a little bit, he talked about the apprenticeship, how sometimes it can just get a little sour after some point.
Yeah.
And it's usually because the student is getting really close to the teacher. And now the teacher is like, you can be of great use to me because I've duplicated myself in a sense.
Yeah.
But you're kind of reaching that age where you want to branch off and be independent, and I don't that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
So have you dealt with experiences where maybe like you have some mentors that really taught you some things, but they almost want to keep you below?
Yeah. One of the biggest mistakes I made was overshadowing the mentor. You know, whether it's, you know, suggesting too much, we should do this or we should do that, or sort of getting out of my position as someone who is working for somebody else. So I would just be very careful with that. But at the root of it, it's really studying human psychology. And that's something I highly recommend. Understand human psychology, understand how the ego works, understand how to work with other people, and really study your field and talk to people who have been in it in those situations before you decide to throw yourself in. I just threw myself in. I had no idea what I was doing.
I feel like Robert Greene would almost agree to that, though.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's the highest highs and the lowest lows. Like if I knew before going in, I probably would have been more reserved and not just sort of taking these crazy leaps.
Yeah.
Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I wouldn't take it back because I learned like a lot. But I would have been way more self-reflective, journaling, like analyzing, like and really understanding my contacts and being like aware of who's who and how can I add value.
That's the question right there.
How can I add value whether it doesn't matter if you're in art, you got to understand like how can I add value to my fan base? If you're working with another producer, how can I add value to their music? If you're working for an artist, how can I add value to their, production or their marketing or.
So everybody that's watching this are creatives in some way, because that's most of the people that watch on my channel and my YouTube. They're creatives. They're spiritual and so happen to be creatives.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they see these big, like they have these big dreams, these big goals. They want to be in the arenas.
Yeah.
What would be some words of advice that you would have to them when it comes to maneuvering this kind of life as an artist?
Well, there's like different routes to go, right? You can go like the more like industry route, whether that's entertainment or the music industry. And that's going to be very different to navigate than going, say, the online presence route. If you have both, that's ideal, but because that's going to help that. But if you say you go in the industry route, like you have to be so good at networking. For example, if I was touring with someone, I don't really care how good they are. If they can play the parts, that's fine. But are you cool? Do you get along with the team? Are you a good person? Like, do you show up on time? Then cool. And you look the part and you know, sweet.
Okay.
That's way more valuable to me than like somebody who's maybe super talented but is suffering in all
chemistry.
Yeah, chemistry.
It's a team.
Yeah,
It's so I really believe sports and art is super interweaved. Now, I did want to go back to something you were talking about with the ego. What are a few things that you've learned? Because we sevens. And I know, like, once you say some shit I don't like, bitch, I'm tuned out of this conversation. I don't even want to be in this room. I'm in my head now. I'm reserved.
Yeah.
What is some piece of advice, and I'm even asking for me, I think that's the best way for me to ask these questions, what I would want to know.
Yeah.
What is a piece of advice that you would give to people when it comes to the ego in the human psychology? Because I'm pretty sure if I was watching this, I'd be like, wait, can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Well, I would say like understand your, I was going to say understand your human design. Understand, what, your maybe your numerology, like what type of person are you? Not to say like, oh, I'm just this person, this is how I'm going to be, but so you can work on your strength, on your weaknesses as a person. Okay. For example, me, I'm more of like a hermit, but I'm really good at creativity, so I needed to work on my social skills.
Okay.
I needed to work on, my communication, not through my art, but through my, the way that I spoke and my energy as a person, and not get so like, not get so antisocial, not get so like, I was an introvert for many years, and then I realized I'm like, you have to be both things. You have to be able to sit in a room and create your art for long periods of time, but you also need to be able to be out there and talk to people. But you have to understand, if you're working with artists, you got to understand who you're working with. Yeah. For example, if you're working with entrepreneurs, they're very different people than artists.
Now, that's the thing, though. That's the thing. I feel like there is an underlying connection there, though.
Yeah. I'm definitely stereotyping. Don't take that
No,
with a
I
grain of
know.
salt.
I'm
Yeah.
not disagreeing with what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I think there's a hidden connection, or maybe there should be a more connection between the artist and the entrepreneur. Because sometimes I feel like we think it's either or. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like we try to compartmentalize things sometimes a little too much.
That hurt me for years because I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Like I loved making art, but I hated working for other people. I always wanted to do my own thing, and I took a sacrifice in the industry working for other people, but over time I realized I'm just a hired gun right now. Like, you know, I prefer the entrepreneurial spirit, but with that comes a whole new set of skills.
Yep.
Whole new set of skills. It's a whole new level of mastery.
But at the end of the day, that sounds like the evolution. Because I feel like we're entering an era where I don't know, I think you said this. Did you mention Renaissance? Did you mention that or no?
I don't think so, but that's a great word
right?
to use. Yeah.
I feel like time is kind of, the Leonardo da Vinci is kind of coming back around where if you're only good at one thing, it's almost as if you're limiting yourself because that one thing bleeds into so many other things.
Yeah.
Just like Kobe Bryant doing ballet. You know what I'm saying? Like that's mastery. Going a little bit outside of your craft to learn.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
In the book
I just had the craziest visual of it.
Yeah. In the book Mastery, they talk about how you have to go a little, like the person who goes, the person who starts outside of the craft and then comes in the craft tends to be a little bit more, I guess, talented or a little bit more creative when it comes to it.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking in a more connection type of way. Like I'm connecting this with this, and I can see the underlying connection between. That's why I say I feel like people I feel like they've taught us not to look at business.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about, for example, well, it's even getting this way with music where, you know, like I had to move to LA to learn how to produce and learn how to work with artists. You still can't really get that online, maybe a little bit, but you can definitely learn how to make music online now. And the thing with music was I just put myself in those situations over the years and learned over a long period of time. But with business and entrepreneurship, I paid a lot of money to be around top people who were where I wanted to be. So that was later in my career over the last 3 or 4 years. And that completely changed the way that saved me
That's not even enough. My brain, the 7 in me. I'm like,
about it.
So can you give me some of the top things that you've learned in the past 3-4 years being in the rooms with, and you can name drop if you want. If you don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All good. But you gotta give us something.
Well, I mean, like, I think like for me, one of my mentors in business, who was actually in music, and then he moved over. He became a millionaire through selling mastering courses.
Okay.
And then he sold his business for like 10 mil or something like that. And then he started like coaching other people.
Yeah.
But he was telling me he really worked with me to figure out who I was and really the value that I had to offer. One of the hardest things when you're working in like an industry or something like that is you're not really able to fully expand who you are. So it taught me about deep self-inquiry, about figuring out who you are and who you can help. And you don't need a crazy degree or something like that. You just need a passion, and you need to understand how to like coach and work with people. So that was a really big idea that he kind of brought to me, where it was just like really knowing my value and knowing my self-worth. So there was this confidence that came in that was like, yeah, I don't need to go and have somebody else tell me, you know, what my value is. Like I can find it out for myself. And there's now with the internet, there's a marketplace for it. You know, you can teach somebody's sitar, like you can run a sitar class and probably make like $1 million a year, selling courses doing that or something like that. So he really turned me on to the online education space too. Multi-billion-dollar industry. It's going to take over the world. Yeah. So, learning how to teach, learning how to package up your information and sell it, understanding branding, understanding marketing, all that stuff, and just being really like a one-stop shop.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, cool. So if I know how to do all those things, then what I can do is I can just learn things and expand myself and then teach others, package up that information and sell that information. So you're constantly finding your curiosity, figuring out what you're inspired by, developing yourself as a person, packaging up that information, and then just bringing along people right behind you.
I think that's
what I'm saying?
I think that's the most beautiful part about
that's what I was saying about Tony Robbins.
Yes.
Tony Robbins does that.
Yeah, I think that's the most beautiful part about business, because I was in network marketing before I took music serious. I was always playing music and on the piano since a kid. But at the age of 18, I joined network marketing and I got introduced to the idea of personal development for the first time. And I was at a time where it was like really hard for me. Father just passed away. So like I needed something, because it's like when a situation like that happens, the first thing you can start doing is like, why? Like, what's going on? Why me? Like, what did I do? Like, what the fuck is, and I've started to realize that most business, it's just, it almost seems like a life law that is 90% mental, if not 100%.
Yeah.
Basketball is 90% mental, 10% physical. Yeah. So it's like realizing that even, because I love this entrepreneurship journey and seeing who you are at 10,000, see who you are at 20,000, who you become at 30,000, and so on. Yeah. And you see that $20,000 person is not the same person that's that $1 million person. Yeah. And
it's an inner game.
It's an inner game.
And it's spiritual.
It's
nice. It's spiritual, and that's one thing that my mentor told me again. And I heard this really great quote last week. I'm sure you've heard, like, you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around with.
The mastermind.
What about you are the average of the 5 stories that you tell yourself?
Damn.
Okay, so like, who are you? What are the stories that you tell yourself about the money that you make, the value that you have, what your potential is? You can rewrite those stories. You can rewrite how you
Then we go back into Joe Dispenza. All of these authors, you know what? Instead of saying all of these authors are connected as people, you start to realize that it's just that unity, that consciousness that is expressing itself through different people. And then when you're conscious enough and aware enough of what's really happening in front of you, you can recognize what's really truth. I've always said, like, within like stocks and trading, they call it confluence. That if something is confirming something in different ways, so let's say I need a sign and then 3 or 4 different people say the same thing that don't know each other, that's called confluence. And that's where you can find the most accurate answer or the most accurate point to enter in the trade. So I'm realizing that through these people, the Tony Robbins and the even all of the millionaires, I've noticed within the last week that they all say certain things. They all say it's like they almost went to the same mastermind. You know what I'm saying? There's one that's success leaves clues. There's another one, success loves speed. There's another one, and I think it's just law. There's another one that says the habit of going the extra mile. That's something that I'm really practicing right now. Yeah,
show the universe that you really want it.
And it goes back to Christ consciousness. I'm not really Christian or anything like that, but I understand that there's confluence in all of the religions.
I could go into Christ consciousness. Don't get me started on that.
No.
That
we need to go.
Crazy.
We need to go in Christ consciousness. Because I had a trip happen. Joe Rogan, I'm coming for you, boy. I had a trip happen, and I kept hearing Christ consciousness, because there's different figures in different religions that represent that Christ consciousness. And in African spirituality, there's this Orisha named Obatala. He wears all white. He represents Christ consciousness. They literally connect them.
Yeah.
And I remember tripping out, and I'm wearing all white. Just so happen to wear all white. And the thing about it is, you could tap into certain energies just by the colors that you wear. You know, just the colors that you put in the studio, RGB. And I'm like, while I'm tripping out, I just keep listening. I keep hearing Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness. And I believe Christ consciousness is also the key to having as much wealth as you want, because it goes back to giving and receiving. Are you willing to serve? And it goes back also to the mentorship. You learn the most from the feet of someone else. Now, I'm talking about this one person. I haven't talked to this person in 2 years. This is how the world, that confluence, the world confirms thing. I'm talking about someone that I haven't seen in 2 years, and I say, Christ consciousness, Christ consciousness. The next day, and she's a 33 life path. So that lets me know 33, crazy. Jesus Christ died at 33.
Oh, yeah.
So when people are 33 life paths, it's like they have this, like, they hear they can hear God in ways that some people cannot hear because of how blocked off they are. The next day, she reaches out to me, and she's just like, hey, I feel ready to talk to you. And I'm like, what the fuck? It's like, you heard me.
That's straight
the
up.
First time we get on the phone, she says, it's Christ consciousness. And I'm like, holy shit.
You tapped in. Like, so I really started studying this recently. Have you ever heard of sacral secretion?
I've heard of something like that. Is that dealing with the third eye?
So it has to do with your third eye, but it's a Kundalini practice where you actually, people are saying that the 33 is actually 33 vertebrae in the spine.
Yes.
And there's a practice, and I actually got it. The woman's book's right over there. She's got this really dope YouTube channel. I can't remember her name, but she basically goes through the practice of when the moon is closest to your sun sign every month, right?
Okay.
You can do a practice where you channel your sexual energy or your chi.
Like a tantra kind of thing?
And you do, so what you do is say like, on the 21st, the moon is closest to Sagittarius, which is my sign. So that's the Sagittarius moon that's coming in. So for several days, so a couple days before it enters and a couple days after, I'm going to do a very strict diet, right? Okay. No coffee, no acidic foods, no meat, no alcohol, no anything like that. And I get very tapped in, and you're praying, you're doing these sort of breath practices. And what you're doing is you're actually taking the energy. There's this like energy that goes and it releases. It's this crazy thing that happens in our body. And our brains actually have crystals. And the magnetism of the crystals with the moon. I just started learning about this stuff. It's crazy. It's super crazy. We are literally the craziest technology. It's so nuts.
That's why in the Matrix they say they want to turn you into a battery. But going back to the 33 vertebrae. My numerology teacher, he mentioned how, the spine is very connected to a serpent. Very connected to a serpent. He says that the snake, the people who are born the year of the snake, are the people who are the closest to the 33 vibration. You get what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay.
And it's so funny because when you look at that tree of life too, and the caduceus, it's all connected. But I always tell people, because I started doing a meditation 9 a.m., that certain breaths, and I'm going to ask you about this, certain breaths that we take can be very cleansing to the spine. So I always tell people, when you take this breath, imagine it's coming from the root, going up and coming back down to cleanse this spine. Now, have you ever been to any of Joe Dispenza's retreats or anything like that? Have you done any?
No, but I do his meditation daily.
That's what we do. So
fire.
That's what we do. And I never was a meditation person.
It's okay.
Us sevens, like, some people, they can tap in. without even meditating. Not saying that that is an excuse, because once you meditate, you get more tapped in.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's too much already without the meditation.
Yeah.
That it kind of made me a little wary of opening myself up like that. But then when I actually sat down and got intentional, because for the first time I started to feel my mind and my head being attacked. For the first time, I've always had a strong mindset. But of course, as you get, you start leveling up, you have to become a different animal. You have to start thinking differently.
Yeah.
And you have to, they say, oh my God, I just read this on Winning. He said you have to like, almost like update your mind, or like every season it needs a new oil change or something like that.
Yeah.
And
you're getting oxygen to your brain and you're cleansing. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're expanding your aura.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an incredible practice. And I've been doing it for about, so I did it like 5 or 6 years ago. I manifested some crazy stuff, dude.
Off of Joe Dispenza's practice?
I manifested that
every day?
house with the studio. I manifested all that shit.
How did you do it? Tell us.
Every day.
Wait, hold on. Before you say that, let me just get this thought out. The meditations is connected to that. The meditations, for the first time, I started to feel the ecstasy that he was talking about.
Yeah.
Where you do that feeling and you just feel that high.
Yeah.
Now, how did you manifest that?
So I was really, really clear at that time on what I wanted. And I had a really, really clear picture. And this is the key that a lot of people don't get. I had like a perfect picture in my mind of me walking into the backyard of my house with my studio. I had a little back house, the sun shining, open it up, fresh cup of coffee, like all my friends are cooking music, like, you know, just the perfect setup. And it was like, and it just like saying what's up to like my best friend who just got a record deal. All that shit happened.
Wow.
It all happened, but I had a very, very clear intention, and the emotion was so strong for me, and I was able to tap into that on a daily basis.
So you were doing that every day, tapping into that?
Every day.
Once or twice a day?
Once a day, but the meditations are long. It didn't matter for me as long as I did it every day. But there is something to be said. If you do it right when you wake up or when you go to bed, that's when the subconscious is the most programmable. So yeah, so I would recommend doing it super early in the morning.
The meditation, was it was the 35-minute one on YouTube, or did you have something more, like did you have an actual?
No, it was from his actual book, Becoming Supernatural. So there's an actual,
okay.
I mean, he probably doesn't have a CD anymore, but basically what I did was
you had a CD?
I'm pretty sure this one had a CD. So I burnt the CD, and then what I did, there was multiple meditations, and I actually put them all in one. So I put it in my DAW on Ableton, and I like made one giant track. So I did the intro of him talking. So I just like, what I would do is I would write in my journal, like, you know, what I'm grateful for. Or I actually started doing this Tesla 369 thing. Have you heard about that?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah. So I started writing 3 times, like in the morning, I am statements of like, I am happy and grateful, X, Y, whatever. Yeah. And I would do that but I would do that in a very high vibrational state. Anyway, so I would start with that. I would listen. He has this little intro, and then it goes into this. What's interesting about Joe Dispenza's meditations is it combines all these different practices of ancient healing breathwork modalities from like ancient Egypt, you know, a lot of Eastern cultures, and he combines it, and he actually like really evolved it over the last few years. I can send you the one that I have. It's so good. Anyway, so you do this sort of rising of the breath, and you're sort of just you bring up the energy, and then you sort of like hold it. So you're it's all about creating that focus.
Yeah.
Focus like and the hardest part now is we are so ADD now. So I'd say like the hack for anyone, like if you can learn to control your focus and attention, like the Joe Dispenza stuff is good in my opinion, but the ultimate thing is if you can stay in a high vibrational state all the time. So this to me the meditations are just a warm up, but after doing it for a couple months every day, I'd be like in the elevator going down, and I'll be like, I'm gonna tap in right now. I'm gonna tap in. I'm just gonna
And you
I'm gonna raise
mastered
my
it to the
vibration.
point where you
Right.
could do it with your eyes open.
Right. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping into that emotion of what I want to feel, and I'm being a creator of my environment. I'm being a creator of my inner world, and I'm not letting the environment control. I'm not going into default doom scrolling or just thinking about some bullshit. Like I'm really tapping in and being like, no, I'm going to be a creator right now. And that's what Joe talks about all the time.
So at any point, because we deal with this is very real.
Cool.
When do you feel like you may have stopped? Because sometimes we get what we manifest, and then
That's
stop doing.
That's what happened.
We stop it, but that's connected
And
to
then
business
my whole
too.
life went down. I had this crazy
You
dark
stopped
night.
the routine.
I had this crazy during COVID. I mean, COVID was a crazy time. I had a crazy dark night of the soul, and then I came out of it and started doing it again. And I vowed to myself after that, I will never not meditate every day.
How long did it take you to realize what it was that you stopped? How long did it take you?
Like years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure there were times where you said like, what happened?
Well, I let myself become a victim of circumstance and my environment, and I let people and circumstances control me. Yeah.
And it's like a small change over time.
Yep.
That's something that I've been noticing lately. Like, there's certain people in my life that I know I have to kind of create some distance with. And as a teacher, I've noticed that sometimes we can be too active as a teacher in people's lives. Like, I'm learning a lot about leadership right now. A lot about leadership and how to truly lead. And I'm learning a lot of leadership from people like David Goggins, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Very intense because I'm an athlete. That's how I know how to think about things.
Yeah.
So I'm a type of person where like I may be like really sweet right now, but it's like I want to win. And I can really get very intense. My moon is in Aries. So I'm like very fiery, like let's go.
I'm the same.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I went through the same stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like I went through this with conspiracy theories, with spirituality. It's like you learn all this. I'm a teacher, right? So it's like you learn all this stuff and you want to share it with others. You want to share it with your loved ones and you want to help them and you want to help other people around you. But, like you ever read a book and then like you read it like 5 years later and you're like, did I even read this book? Like,
yes.
I resonate with this now. Like, it's the same with telling people information. Like, their genetic, like their cellular makeup or their awareness is not at the level of yours yet, or they're just not on the same frequency. And so it's a letting go of your ego and just being like, you get better at like pointing it out or like recognizing that and just being like, no. Yeah. So
and I've also noticed too, like, sometimes, because I'm born the year the cat. The cat is a very psychological creature. Like Michael Jordan and David Goggins, born on the same birthday. They're both cats, and you can kind of see how they view things. And sometimes as cats, like, we don't give a fuck. It's how we view it. You know what I'm saying? And I've noticed that it's like sometimes you can really get a breaking point or a really like a breakthrough with the student or someone who's learning from you when you just like do you, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Well, if you're an artist and you're expressing yourself, that's one thing. But if say someone's hired to work with, like they hire you to work with them, or you're a teacher to somebody, you really have to ask yourself, is what I'm saying and the energy I'm coming with penetrating them? Is it really
that's the art right there too.
Yeah. And there's such a surrender that you need to start to have when doing that. And I went from, over the years, talking a lot, or like, I don't want to say preaching, but just like making statements, to asking way more questions. And that's another thing, just to go back to the mentorship, the art of asking questions. That was one of the biggest things I learned from my mentorship.
Expand on that. So
I realized when I entered this space of these high net worth individuals, very, very smart. They weren't speaking that much. But everything that came out of their mouth was so strong and so purpose-driven, and a lot of these guys studied sales. A lot of these guys were really into sales, so they understood human psychology on a very deep level. So they would get the information from their clients and everything by asking certain questions that would reveal something about them. So then, once they understood where that person was at, then they could sort of understand how to approach a specific topic or something like that. Whereas like before, I would just come in guns blazing. So yeah, it's like I learned how to ask questions in a specific way, and it also saved me a lot of energy because I let the person do all the talking, and they're learning about themselves through talking, not me preaching to them. So they're coming up, they're speaking of like, oh yeah, I did that. Like I did that over and over again. I don't know why I did that. Instead of me being like, you did that over and over again. Like me like talking down to them or something like that. I would ask them questions that made them sort of come up with the answers of the self-realization or the epiphanies themselves. So I noticed like my brother's really good at that, who's in sales, like the art of asking questions.
He knows, I can tell from his birthday, he really knows how to mirror people too.
Yeah. Incredible.
Or see like that's something I can say too. I'm not going to really connect the number, but you know what I'm trying to say. But the year that you're in, you can really see through things, see through people, see truth, because it's a mirror. Yeah. I do want to ask you a question, because people who are in those years of truth, I love to get reflections. And we've talked before when it came to us working together. My question is, we attracted for a reason. There's something that you saw or something that you heard that you felt like, okay, this is familiar to the other people that I know are authentic or I know are on the right path.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I can actually describe I remember the exact moment. I was watching one of your YouTube videos and you were talking about, you were an artist that made music, and I was like, the energy that she's coming off with right now are not the typical artists that I've worked with. Like, it's very authentic, very open. And then you started talking about how you started going to these, speaking things because you were like working with somebody else. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then you mentioned Myron Golden.
I love Myron Golden.
And then chills. I was like, because I love Myron Golden so much. I was just
watching him yesterday.
He is such a legend, and he's such a pure spirit, but he's so legit. So he has this like very egoless sort of nature to him, which I love. And I just think he's an incredible speaker, an incredible storyteller. And the way he ties in the Bible with his stories and everything, and have
you seen him speak?
Not live.
I would
absolutely love to. Absolutely love to. I want to go see him. I want to go see Joe Dispenza, and yeah, I mean, absolute legend. But anyway, that's how I found you out, and I just like the way you spoke, and I just have this thing whenever I watch people on YouTube, I can watch someone for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, I get it. Like, I don't need to know that much more. But yeah, I was just like listening to your videos when I was like cooking or something one day. And I was just like, I like this person. And then you mentioned the numerology. And then I was really interested in that, because that was just something that I came across. And I think your mentor was like, I was following your mentor.
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I ask these questions because it helps me understand more of what everyone else sees, because sometimes we're so in our own perspective that we can't even perceive ourselves correctly sometimes.
100%.
And it's so funny that the very thing that attracted you towards the energy is that something that at one point I thought was crippling me, which goes back to our conversations about the art and the teacher and the entrepreneur, having these different versions of us. and realizing like we're just expanding as a consciousness and as a humanity where we're not identifying ourselves with one thing. Hell, people not even identifying with anything anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I went through a crazy, like, kind of dark night of this whole surrendering process to my identity as a musician, as an artist, and being like, I'm always going to be making music and art, but there is so much more to me I want to explore.
Yes.
And I think I saw that in you, where I was like, I could tell she's being very, very authentic. And I'm very attracted to authenticity and also vulnerability. That's how I connect with people. Is through like when I see someone like really like letting themselves go and because that to me is like one of the strongest things a person can do. You know, that really takes a lot. So I've always had a tough time, especially like as a man with other men. Like, you know, it's very rare that you see men sort of like being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Not always, I'm stereotyping, but like, so
I want to talk about that too.
Yeah. But yeah, I've always connected through the art of vulnerability, and I think that's part of like my artistry too, like being able to we're connecting through vulnerability.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where I wanted to go with this one now. Okay.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say was, okay. So I was listening to this book on the way here, and it really got me thinking. The book it's Tim Grover. You ever heard of Tim Grover?
Yeah.
Okay, I love Tim Grover. I started reading Tim Grover when I was playing basketball at 16 years old.
Whose coach was he?
He was the trainer of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
So he's where I learned work ethic. He's where I learned, okay, get up 6 a.m., try to get there before everybody, purposely try to outwork everybody. Yeah. And I got into really like, I would always show out during conditioning. This is where it's straight mental like mentality. It's not how good you can cross over, but how bad you want it. So he says something very interesting. I'm a Scorpio, so I'm very emotional. I'm very deep when it comes to the things that I feel. And he started to mention like sometimes you have to turn your feelings off, right? And I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, interesting.
Especially if you're living like discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, turn your feelings off. It goes into discipline and what you feel in those ends, but even sometimes with the emotions. And the way I think about it was like with David Goggins' story. Like, he went through just straight abuse. And he had to turn off. I'm
not trying to laugh at his story is just so crazy.
No, for real. It's like it just don't make sense sometimes. Like, it makes sense because he tells you it and it all connects.
Well, he retrained himself to like be, I think, an addict to pain. I'm going to be straight with you.
Yeah.
That seems like the vibe. Not personally, I'm trying to live my life, but I respect it.
I feel you. I feel like there's always, and he says that, you know, like you don't have to go fucking run a mile, but like start pushing yourself. Because the one thing that's been coming up again, that confluence is you don't really know your capacity for real. Oh, and that haunts me. Like, oh my God, it haunts me because I'm just like, oh my fucking God. Like, what am I settling for?
That was like one of the biggest things I learned about when I moved to LA and I started working with like world-class artists and producers. It was like a double-edged sword because I realized I wasn't even tapping into a percentage of what's possible. And that's what really made me want to be my own artist, was when I went out there. I was like, there's more for me.
But what aspect of it? Was it how much they were showing up? Was it like, I mean, clearly it has to start with how much they're showing up.
It was just a stupid work ethic. Damn. Like, I'm talking about they're churning out 2-3 songs a day.
High quality?
Oh, yeah, like demo, like... Yeah, like really, really good stuff.
How many hours you think they're spending a day on that?
Oh, I mean, the producer that I was collaborating with a lot at the time, we shared the same manager. His name is Mitty Jones. Incredible producer. He would do 3 sessions a day.
Oh my God.
So he would start in the morning and he would just go. But I noticed like he was literally running on like trauma. Like, I didn't really, I saw
I'm going to tell you the numbers behind that too. Go ahead. The trauma.
I saw how I got to learn about his history and his past and everything like that. And I was like, I don't want to live like that. You know, I don't care how much I do believe there's a grind period, but I realized that like I didn't want to turn out like a lot of people that I was around. You know, I started to get around more older people who were like quote unquote successful, but they actually weren't that happy and they weren't that fulfilled because there was always someone younger than them coming up and doing better than them, and it was like it was not about service. It was about
ego.
It was ego shit. How many placements you get, how many Billboard #1 hits, you know, and I actually started to get some of those things, whether it was the tour, whether it was this, and it was like checking off a box, and the feeling went away like money hitting my bank account. It was the same thing. It was it didn't hit.
So this is what I've noticed about people in the trauma. So trauma, it starts off with T. T is the 20th letter in the alphabet. 20 is it's a hidden 11. And so basically when you see people born on the 20th, that basically means they're born on the 11th day. People on the 20th probably deal with a lot of trauma also. So 11 is the number of emotional energy. And Tony Robbins is a double 11. That's why he has so much energy to give. Now, the thing about an 11 is that if they don't use the energy right, they suck. Think about it, trauma. If they don't use the energy right, they become vampires. When they use the energy right, they become sources of like healing. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. That's why, because I bet if we look at his birthday or something like that, he probably got an 11 somewhere in there. And it's like you look at them and you're like, bro, where is this energy coming from?
Yeah.
It's a mix between trauma and emotional energy.
Yeah.
You can see that in a lot of Kanye West is an 11 life path, Kobe Bryant 11 life path, Michael Jordan 11 life path. They have to take that energy from somewhere. That's why I say sometimes, like, it's funny, the most emotional people tell you to turn the emotions off.
Yeah.
Not in the negative way that some people may take, but more so in the, like, you letting it run you.
Yeah. And, like, I understand how you could use that as fuel for a while, but it's only going to last you so long. And what I realized was, like, if I think people are scared to shut that off. And because if you don't run on that, like, what are you running off of? You know? And I took that leap and I decided to like make a change and like shut that off for a while, and I was like
3 sessions a day though, that's crazy.
Yeah, super crazy.
How many hours you think is these sessions?
I mean, like maybe 5 hours, something like that.
So
5,
about
7.
15 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's just his every day.
Yeah, every day was just going in, but like, you know, he's making like crazy money and he has like, you know, amazing placements.
But it's a snowball effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think about that with YouTube. I can't imagine if somebody was posting 3 times a day for like a couple of years, that would snowball into a lot of wealth.
You got to be willing to sacrifice a lot.
That's the word.
And I realized that I was willing to sacrifice to a certain extent, but I wasn't willing to like lose my sanity